hopefully everybody can see that. If you can't, just throw something in the chat there, but looks like it's working. If you have any questions along the way, go and throw them in the chat. These are new laws, so we're all learning together. Some of them aren't new. They're, revised. So let me minimize that. Okay, so let's start with listing and marketing rules. So we have AB 723 passed, and that is digitally altered images disclosure. So this pertains a lot to real estate ads. So what it does is if you or your photographer slash marketer use a digitally altered image in a listing ad, such as removing power lines, adding virtual grass, staging beyond normal edits, you must disclose it and provide access to the unaltered original via link or QR code. Why does this matter? It is a compliance risk on MLS portals and social media, and then also expecting buyer side scrutiny. We don't want to mislead people on photos. And I think that's what this kind of stemmed from with all the AI that's really getting ingrained in our business, especially when it comes to videos and photographs. So action for agents and brokers. So update your listing intake and media SOPs. Require photographers to flag AI altered images. Add a standard disclosure line plus link QR on web listings and ads. You can also add that into your social media profile or just on the post itself. It's probably not a bad idea. So, a real estate broker, salesperson, or person acting on their behalf who includes a digitally altered image in an advertisement or other promotional material for the sale of real property shall include in the advertisement or promotional material a statement disclosing that the image has been altered and a link to the publicly accessible internet website URL or QR code that includes and clearly identifies the original unaltered image. The statement must be conspicuous, located adjacent to the image, and indicate that the unaltered image can be accessed through the link. If the advertisement is posted on internet website over which the broker or salesperson acting on their behalf has control, they may alternatively include the unaltered version of the image. So, if you want to make one photo, the altered one, and the next photo right behind it, the unaltered one, that would suffice. This law applies to images altered with photo editing software or AI, but does not apply when only common photo editing adjustments are made. So we're not talking about cleaning up the pictures a little bit. We're talking about removing things and adding things that weren't necessarily there. But polishing up the pictures, adjusting the lighting and stuff like that is not what we're talking about here. So what does digitally altered image mean? An image created by or at the direction of the real estate broker or salesperson or person acting on their behalf, altered by photo editing software or artificial intelligence to add, remove, or change elements in the image, including fixtures, furniture, appliances, flooring, walls, etc. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. Street lights, utility poles, stuff like that. Don't Photoshop an ocean in or, that kind of stuff. That's what they're talking about. Digitally altered image does not include images where only lighting, sharpening, white balance, color correction, angle straightening, etc. are applied to the photograph. So, we all get the professional photos done usually on our listings, and when they're polished up, this is not what we're talking about. So, keep that one in mind. And one other thing that I've seen few notifications come out from mainly CRMLS. If you are provided the photos from your client, you do need to have authorization to put those into MLS. There is a photos form in Zip Forms that you can use for this. If that listing gets flagged for whatever reason, you will get a notification from MLS or from the compliance department at MLS, and they are going to ask you for that photos release if you are using photos that were supplied by the homeowner or really anybody else. But that's just a little side note. All right, now HOAs, common interest. So this is going to be condos, planned unit developments, etc. So the balconies, yeah, we've been having quite a few condo deals dropping out on both sides, listing and sales, because they cannot be financed. And, I see emails flying around, and we're like, well, our unit is compliant. But that doesn't matter, actually. The whole community actually needs to be in compliance in order for it to be lent on. So let's talk about this a little bit and what we can do to prevent cancellations. So, SB 410, the balcony exterior elevated elements, that's going to be known as EEE, inspection record disclosure. What it does, it tightens HOA EEE inspection compliance and requires owners associations to provide inspection results to buyers. Associations must maintain reports and can charge a fee to provide them. Why does this matter? Adds a new HOA doc buyers will ask for. Delays if associations aren't organized. Action when listing a condo or PUD, request the EEE reports up front. Add to your HOA doc checklist and timelines. You'll want to check this out, especially if you're on the listing side, because when you're inputting that listing into MLS, you have to, put in the terms that you're going to accept as far as financing. And if this community is not in compliance, your financing might default to cash only. So there's some lending out there that can be done on them, but it is getting very, very thin. What SB 410 changes for listings in HOAs? When you sell a unit in a common interest development, the seller must provide the buyer with the results of the HOA's EEE. The standard HOA disclosure packet and statutory disclosure form are updated to include the EEE inspection results. How this ties into existing balcony EEE laws. California already requires this inspection. That was SB 326. That was first due on January 1st of this year, and then again every 9 years. And SB 721 was multifamily rentals, and that is due this January 1st, 2026, and then again every 6 years. SB 410, which we're talking about, adds a sales time disclosure requirement so buyers see the latest inspection result. Why should you care as an agent? The EEE report can reveal critical repairs, material deficiencies, or special assessments that can directly affect buyer financing under Fannie Mae rules and your deal timeline. Let's see here. No questions yet. So Fannie Mae rules your deal must clear. So this is the part that the lenders check. Fannie Mae's condo co-op project standards require lenders to confirm a project. So that is the entire community, not just the unit itself. Does not have significant deferred maintenance or unsafe conditions and can meet budget reserve and special assessment requirements. Key pieces agents should understand. Projects with critical repairs or unsafe conditions are ineligible until fixed. This is for lending. If an engineer inspector, including the HOA's EEE inspection, identifies safety structural issues or significant deferred maintenance, the building is typically ineligible for Fannie Mae financing until the work is completed and documented. Lenders verify it through the Condo Project Questionnaire, Form 1076, and supporting reports. Special assessments must be reasonable, fully documented, and budgeted. There's a special assessment stemming from the inspection results, and Corrective measures. Lenders must review purpose, remaining balance, payment terms, and impact on reserves. Unresolved or poorly documented assessments can suspend eligibility. Reserves and budget tests still apply. Lenders look for either less than 10% of the budget to reserves or a current reserve study supporting a lesser amount. A weak reserve line, common when HOAs delay this work, can jeopardize eligibility. Lenders will ask the structural integrity questions. So on Form 1076 questionnaire, it includes direct questions like, are all repairs affecting safety, soundness, and structural integrity complete? And are reserves sufficient to fund improvements? If the HOA answers no or unknown, then expect financing problems. So this is something that we should be checking out when we're listing a condo is what is the status of this? So that we know if we're going to run into financing issues or not. And so you can talk to your seller about it as well, because if they're trying to price this as a premium, that could be a problem because if this is an unfinanceable unit, that really could affect the value here and obviously the buyer pool. So what if the HOA is not in compliance with SB 326 or 410, as in no inspection or bad results? Scenario A, let's say they have no EEE inspection on file, or meaning they're out of compliance. Listing must disclose that results are unavailable. For the lender, absence of a required inspection can be treated as an unknown structural risk, which may block Fannie Mae eligibility until the HOA completes an inspection and provides a satisfactory report. Expect portfolio, non-agency, or cash to be the fallback. Portfolio would be where, if you don't know what portfolio is, that's portfolio product. For example, US Bank does these a lot. Where if you have a certain amount of money in a US bank account, they have some, leniency, or they have portfolio product, loan product that they're willing to lend because you are a loyal customer keeping X amount of money in the bank. And so they keep those, they don't sell those off. So that is going to be portfolio product. Non-agency, we're talking about non-QM stuff, or cash obviously is cash. So scenario B, EE inspection shows unsafe or critical repair conditions. Fannie Mae typically deems a project ineligible until repairs are completed and signed off with proof. Or a lender can document that the issues are non-critical and fully mitigated. Deals may need to pause or switch to non-agency financing. Scenario C, large special assessment just approved for EEE work. The loan can still be eligible if the scope is clearly documented, the payment plan is reasonable, and the budget reserves are adequate post-assessment. Sloppy documentation or reserve shortfalls can still make the project ineligible. So you can see this is really, starting to affect quite a few of these condo communities. Agent playbook, so keeping your deal financeable. For listing agents, pre-list packet, ask HOA for the most recent EE inspection report plus any engineer letters, board meetings on repairs, and special assessment details. You'll need them for SB 410 disclosure and for lender review. Budget and reserves, request a current budget, reserve study, and Form 1076, or HOA's willingness to complete it quickly. Red flags, if the reserves are less than 10% with no current reserve study or unknown answers on structural questions. Right there, you're probably looking at something that's going to be ineligible. Price and timeline strategy, if EE work is pending, set expectations about longer escrow or cash non-agency buyers. Consider credits versus price cuts if buyers must pivot lenders. For buyer's agents, early lender sync. This is important. Be in touch with your MLO on this. Before offers, have the buyer's lender pre-screen the HOA with the questionnaire, budget, EE report. Don't rely on unit comps alone. Offer contingencies. Keep HOA document review and loan contingencies until the lender clears structural assessment items. So just don't go releasing all your investigations contingency if this hasn't been reviewed in full. You're going to want to keep at least the HOA contingency in place. Plan B financing. If the project is ineligible with Fannie Mae, discuss non-agency or portfolio options and the cost trade-offs before removing contingencies. So, I guess if you have any questions, you can toss them in there, or any scenarios you've been kind of running into. It's good to share so we can all learn. Another one pertaining to HOAs, common interest. We have SB 770, EV charging and HOAs. So this simplifies approvals, insurance hurdles. Not going to go in depth on this one too much, but what it does is eases installation of EV charging stations in common interest developments. So it relaxes additional assured requirement, clarifies association powers to add shared stations and parking. Why it matters, more unit owners will add charging. This can be a listing feature and or buyer ask. Action for condos, ask HOA about current EV policy availability, highlight in marketing when available. Also lets associations plan, install shared charging, and set terms of use, which is a useful listing amenity. And then AB 1050, unlawfully restrictive covenants. So what it does, further cleans discriminatory deed restrictions, processes, action title escrow teams, ensure standard removal language, agents know how to explain it. So, we have, CCNRs from back in the 50s and 60s and stuff like that. And some of them, um, are not compliant with today's fair housing laws and things like that. And pretty much everybody just overlooks them these days because they're like, well, that obviously doesn't apply. So the state of California is basically just kind of cleaning up all that as properties sell. Escrow is kind of scrubbing those out. So um, next up, actually, let me check the chat real quick. So does SB 326 affect homeowners or rental insurance? It probably definitely can, depending on the status of the community, if they're compliant or non-compliant. Building ADUs and conversions. So this is supply and speed. We have a few updates to ADUs. SB 79, this was kind of a contentious one. So big upzoning near major transit, 8 large counties. So what it does, it overrides local zoning to allow mid-high rise apartments near rail, subway, BRT stops. This can be in LA, San Diego, OC, San Francisco, San Mateo, Alameda, Santa Clara, and Sacramento counties with inclusionary plus phasing details. Why it matters, more infill, taller projects by transit, long-term comp plus neighborhood change, developer activity around stations, action for agents and investors, track parcels within a half-mile of qualifying stops, watch entitlement pipelines, educate sellers on land value shifts. So if you are listing a property that is near, a railway or a subway or something like that, be mindful of what's going on around there if you're in one of these big cities, because this has passed, and whether you like it or not, there might be some big projects coming in. And, if you work with a lot of investors, maybe this is something that they want to get into or are already into, so you can, stay on top of that. ADU accelerators, there's multiple bills here. AB 462, SB 9, SB 543, and AB 1154. What they do, speed, streamline ADU and junior ADU approvals, including coastal zones, concurrent review, 60-day clocks, limit on appeals. and standardized local ADU ordinances. Why it matters, faster yes, no in tricky areas, more inventory options for owners and investors. Action for sellers, price in ADU potential. For buyers, run pro formas with junior ADU rents. For coastal properties, flag the concurrent review advantage. So now, you're running the coastal overlay. If you're in that, you're running approvals through both, entities now at the same time. Adaptive reuse and permit streamlining. So what they do, they make it easier to convert offices, underused buildings to housing and allow third-party residential plan check to cut permit queues. Why it matters, more conversion deals, faster timelines in some cities. So action for investor clients, re-underwrite older commercial to residential if the city participates in third-party plan review. Density bonus, enforcement tune-ups. We got multiple bills here. What they do, they refine density bonuses and strengthen enforcement against local slow walks, non-compliance with state housing law. Why it matters, more leverage to entitle multifamily. Local resistance has fewer tools. Action for small builders, revisit marginal sites for agents, expect more small unit proposals in infill areas. So you can see, obviously, the state is really being favorable for multi-units now, whether it's ADUs, junior ADUs, or just higher density stuff in these infill areas. So if you have investors that like to do that kind of stuff, it just got a little easier for everyone. So this one's interesting. I don't hate it. So landlord tenant habitability, SB 655, minimum indoor temperature standards. So what it does, it directs standards for indoor temperature in dwellings. So this is a habitability health framing. Why it matters, rental listings, property managers will face compliance checks, possible retrofit asks. Action, property managers, audit heating, cooling, document compliance, and lease fees. What SB 655 proposes, I said proposes, it passed. So SB 655 declares it a state policy that all dwelling units should be able to attain and maintain a safe maximum indoor air temperature in addition to already required minimum heating standards. Specifically for newly constructed residential dwelling units, the bill requires California Building Standards Commission in consultation with the California Energy Commission and Department of Housing and Community Development to adopt building standards by July 1st of 2026. So this starts in the summer. This is for newly built units. That include passive and active strategies to cap the indoor temperature at 82 degrees under set climate zone conditions. Bill also requires the HCD to develop a load calculation methodology for meeting both minimum heating and maximum cooling requirements across all climates. Further asks CBSC and HCD to submit separate reports to the legislator. So why is this a big deal? It's a big deal because if you have investors who have older units or are going to be possibly purchasing older units, maybe that's what they like to buy, maybe that's the area they live in. This could affect them in the long term. So to finish this out, the law is currently policy level and sets a requirement for future code updates. The next triennial code cycle after January 1st, 2026. So it does not immediately apply to all existing homes. What this requirement means for real estate agents, construction new builds from July 1st, 2026 onwards, all newly constructed residential units in California must incorporate design and mechanical features so that they can keep indoor air temperature at or below approximately 82 degrees during expected heat loads. Passive strategies may include shading, cool roof, reflective services, cross ventilation, landscaping, etc. Active strategies may include properly sized HVACs, mechanical ventilation, advanced insulation. Agents should highlight new construction listings noting designed for indoor temps under 82 under state policy, which may become a selling point. So if you're doing ground up construction or you're working with a developer, this is a new selling point that's been added. But let's talk about the existing homes and resale markets. While SB 655 doesn't immediately impose retrofit mandates on all existing homes, it signals policy direction. Over time, it may influence local ordinances, rental habitability standards, financing, easement standards, especially in high heat climate zones. For agents, when listing older homes, especially in high heat regions, you can proactively ask, what cooling plan does this home have for summer heat waves? Has insulation, AC, ventilation been upgraded? When working with investors, mention this new bill and potential requirement later for resale homes to help the investor make an informed decision on what they are purchasing and potential upcoming expenses. Well, I don't want to say upcoming, potential future. Um, for landlords, expect future local laws or HOA rules may require proof of adequate cooling or temperature mitigation. Agents should coach landlords to budget for potential requirements for cooling upgrades. So for the investors out there, keep an eye on this one because I don't see why they wouldn't add this into resales eventually. I mean, I think it's definitely coming down the pipeline. So if they currently own or if they are going to be purchasing older units, you might suggest they look into SB 655 because if this continues down its path, very shortly in the next year or two, they may have requirements for retrofit and making sure the home can stay cool. There's a lot of homes in California that don't have AC. So, um, yeah. Heat, high heat climate zones and renters. SB 655 explicitly mentions vulnerable and disadvantaged communities are disproportionately affected by extreme heat. Local jurisdictions like Los Angeles County are already enacting rental unit maximum indoor temperature rules, which is the indoor temp max 82 inhabitable rental units as the policy evolves. So we're already seeing it in Los Angeles. It's going to be spreading throughout. So keep this in mind when you're working with investors. See if they have looked it up. What SB 655 does not do, at least not yet, does not require immediate retrofits for all pre-existing homes. Its legal enforcement is targeted at code updates for new construction initially. It does not specify exact enforcement mechanisms for resale or rental units yet. Those details would depend on local jurisdictions and follow on regulations. It does not guarantee every home will automatically be compliant. Financing, habitability enforcement, and disclosure regimes may follow later, but are not spelled out immediately. Talking points for your clients. California is establishing a maximum indoor temperature standard of 82 degrees for newly built homes. This means comfort cooling are now a selling point and not just heating. When you're listing or buying in high heat part of the state, ask about cooling design credentials, insulation, HVAC, etc. This will increasingly matter in value and disclosure. For investment property clients, consider that older buildings may face future requirement for cooling upgrades. Build in margins for equipment, insulation, or retrofit costs. In rental markets, expect local jurisdictions to adopt habitability standards around maximum indoor temps. Landlord compliance risk may increase. Listing agents should flag homes that already have modern cooling systems and documented. Let's see. So I don't know how you guys feel about that one, but I think we're gonna have some additional. When does SB 410 take effect? It's in effect. So yeah, I think we're gonna have some additional disclosures coming down our pipeline, and I do think this will become, um, get into the resale market sooner than later. Um, Another small one, AB 1414, internet service charges and rentals. What it does, it addresses landlord tenant issues with ISP subscriptions, fees, access terms, things like that. Why it matters, prevents surprise pass-throughs, reduces disputes in multifamily. What's the action? Update, move in, packets, lease addenda, clarify who pays for bundled services. So this one passed a little while ago. Assembly Bill 851, unsolicited offers on residential property and fire affected zip codes. If you are selling in LA, or working in LA, be mindful of this one. Prohibits buyers from making unsolicited offers on residential property in fire affected zip codes until January 1st of 27. Um, Prohibits a person from making an unsolicited offer to purchase residential real property in the fire affected zip codes as follows. I'm not going to name them all off, but they're highlighted right here. Prior to the transfer of title in the purchase of residential real property in fire affected zip codes, the buyer and seller must execute a written attestation affirming that the real property sales contract was not entered into as a result of an unsolicited offer. The attestation must be recorded along with the deed. The attestation creates a presumption that the accepted offer was solicited by the seller of the property unless there is a clear and convincing evidence to the contrary. 4-month right to cancel. A seller shall have the right to cancel a purchase agreement entered into in violation of this law until 4 months after the date of execution of contract. So what is an unsolicited offer? Unsolicited offer to purchase means any offer to purchase a property made by any person by text message, email, phone call, mail, or other means of communication, unless at or before time the offer is made, there's a public indication that the owner is willing to sell the property, including but not limited to the property is for sale by the owner or their agent on a multiple listing service or any publicly available marketing platform, or owner placed a for sale sign in the yard, or owner advertised the property for sale in a print publication or flyer posted in a public place. Uh, or the offer was made prior to enactment of the law. Licensing violation and penalties. An agent who makes an unsolicited offer on their own behalf or on behalf of another is subject to disciplinary action by the DRE. Additionally, violating this law is a misdemeanor punishable with fines of $1,000 and up to 6 months in prison. Civil penalties up to $25K. When does the law go into effect? This is an urgency bill and becomes operative on November 9th, 2025, which, that was a couple weeks ago. So it's in effect. 30 days after the effective date of October 10th, 2026. However, since the law defines an unsolicited offer as including offers made on or after the law was enacted, which is October 10th, as a practical matter, the law is in effect immediately. When does it cease? January 1st, 27. So if you're working in LA, if you're doing cold calls, if you're working with investors in LA, be very mindful of those zip codes there, because you could be in violation if you are making unsolicited offers to people who do not have their home on their market. Summary. Okay, so we have AB 455. We have just a couple more here. Third-hand smoke residue. AB 455 adds a sales disclosure requirement for single-family residential property 1 to 4 unit when the seller has actual knowledge of third-hand smoke residue from vaping or smoking tobacco or nicotine products. It also requires the Department of Toxic Substances Control to update state's homeowner's guide to environmental hazards to include third-hand smoke as a hazard. So when you're going online and you're pulling up the homeowner's guide to environmental hazards, make sure it's the most updated version that you're sending out. Defines third-hand smoke as the toxic chemical residue left behind by tobacco, smoke, or vape, which can be embedded into walls, carpets, furniture, and pose longer-term exposure risk. So what do we need to know as agents? Seller's responsibility. If the seller knows there was smoking, vaping residue, or a history of occupants smoking, vaping, they must disclose it in writing to the buyer. This is in addition to other disclosures. Third-hand smoke hazard. The residue isn't just someone smoked. It means long-term contamination in materials and building systems, may affect perception and valuation. Guide update. The state's environmental hazard guide will now include third-hand smoke. Buyers and sellers can reference this updated educational material. Agent exposure. As the agent, you should verify the disclosure has been made. Ask the listing seller about any known smoking, vaping history, and ensure your listing packet covers this risk. So again, this isn't just, you know, someone came and visited the property and lit up a cigarette. This is long-term exposure of smoking inside the house. And lastly, the FinCEN reporting anti-money laundering rule. I'm sure if you've written an offer recently, you've noticed they added in a new advisory in there. But then we all got notice that this is being postponed. So let's just chat about this real quick and then we can wrap up for the day. So FinCEN reporting anti-money laundering rule, what's happening? So starting March 1st, 2026, escrow or title companies will have to report certain real estate sales to the U.S. Treasury, which is FinCEN. This new rule is called the Residential Real Estate Reporting Rule. It's a federal anti-money laundering rule meant to track who's behind all cash purchases made through LLCs, corporations, or trusts. When is reporting required? Escrow title must file a report with FinCEN if all of these apply. The property is a residential 1 to 4 unit, includes homes, condos, vacant land intended for a home build. A buyer is an entity or trust, not an individual. The purchase is all cash or financed only through a non-bank lender. So a lender that already doesn't report to FinCEN. So we're talking private money. What information must be reported? So escrow title must collect and report personal details for the buyer and seller, anyone who owns or controls the buying or selling entity or trust. What they'll need: legal names, date of birth, current addresses, citizenship, tax ID numbers. For trusts, it'll be trust names, date of execution, and related info. If this information isn't provided, escrow cannot close. So once this goes into effect and you're working with a cash buyer, or you're working with LLCs and trusts, just put this on your list of things that they're going to need in order to close escrow. How it ties into car forms. To make it easier, California Association of Realtors is introducing a new form that is Form FRR-PA. That's the Federal Reporting Requirement Purchase Addendum. This form will automatically be attached to basically all the RPAs out there, vacant land, just all of them, residential income purchases, co-ops, all that. It makes compliance a contractual obligation between buyer and seller. The rule applies to closings on or after March 1st, 2026, so this is coming up, even if the contract was signed earlier. Escrow title may begin collecting this info early if closing might slip into that date range. If information isn't provided, escrow will not close. The party that fails to provide required info may be in breach of the contract. If a related third party, like a trustee or entity owner, doesn't cooperate, the other side can issue a notice to perform and cancel if non-performance continues. Exempt transaction, no FinCEN report is required for gifts or transfers to a personal trust by the owner, easements, transfers due on death or divorce, court supervised transfers like probate, bankruptcy, 1031 exchange transfers into a qualified intermediary. How to explain it to clients? Well, basically starting 2026, escrow and title have to tell the US Treasuries who's really behind all cash purchases made through companies or trusts. It's part of a federal anti-money laundering rule. If your deal involves a trust or LLC, escrow will ask for extra information and they legally can't close until they have it. What agents should do: know which transactions qualify. Watch for entity trust buyers on cash deals. Use the new CAR form, FRR, starting early 2026 or sooner if escrow requests it. Set expectations with buyers and sellers. Extra paperwork, personal info required. So if you have, kind of a private kind of owner making these purchases, let them know that escrow will not close without it. And you don't have to collect this. You can, obviously, this should go straight over to escrow, but you can give them the list of what escrow is going to be asking for so that they're prepared. Coordinate early with escrow to avoid closing delays. Educate your clients that this isn't optional. It's a federal reporting law. So obviously there was, a whole bunch extra laws and things that got passed. I didn't go through all of them. I went through some of the ones that I think are, affecting our business immediately or gonna be maybe coming up here, like the minimum, the AC requirement. So the minimum cooling requirement. So these are things coming down the pipeline. Just adjust your business accordingly. Basically, for us, it's a lot of extra paperwork, but knowing these laws and when you're having these conversations with your investors and homeowners and landlords and things like that, knowing what you're talking about obviously helps that relationship grow with them and keeps everybody safe. So if you have any questions, feel free to always reach out. I'm gonna check Q&A real quick. We already did that one. And then we answered that one. Cool. So sorry, these ones are usually a little dry, but they're good to know. We need to keep up on all of this as we move about our career. So if you have any questions on anything, always give me a call or text. Otherwise, I hope everybody has a great week and we'll see you next week.